One of the things I love so much about planning and journaling is that it can give you a really amazing look back at what your life was like. The mistakes you made, what gave you joy, what you got out of it, and everything in between. And the great part about looking back is that we can use that information to look forward, to plan the future based on what happened in the past, or give ourselves solace during difficult times based on what we have been through before. So today we are going to take a look at the specific reflection strategies I use to preserve my mental health and to grow into the person that I want to be. This video is sponsored by Aura. More on them later. The first kind of reflection that I do, this is the one that I do the most often, is just unstructured longhand journaling. This is the most basic type of journaling and reflecting that I do. And what I do is pretty straightforward. I'm usually in this journal, which is just a grid medium-size moleskin blank notebook. There is nothing fancy, nothing plannery, nothing special about it, except that it is moleskin and they make quite good notebooks in my opinion for journaling and things like that. And I will just every night or every few nights, I will open to a blank page, I will write the date at the top, and I will begin to write about truly whatever comes to my mind. This is the most relaxing form of reflection and journaling for me because it allows me to externalize the way that I'm feeling and my thoughts and get them out of my head. When you are doing longhand journaling, essentially just taking a pen and writing out your thoughts, that action demands that you move slowly. It mandates that you slow down and pursue one thought at a time because you can only move at the speed that you can write. So you need to go slowly. So it's a long practice and it can kind of feel overwhelming sometimes when you sit down in front of a blank page and you don't know what to write and all these thoughts are swirling in your head. But when you sit down and write until you don't feel any anxiety anymore or until any lingering thoughts about the day are out of your head. And if you do that over and over, it can really be life-changing. And I always try to do this in a blank, undated notebook. So this is the one that I'm in right now for my daily journaling. But I also use other notebooks, like this one is a more of a creative journal specifically for things that are related to like my past. Like if I want to journal about, like this is like current events basically, and this is a journal that I use if I'm journaling about, oh, this happened to me in my childhood, or I want to reflect on this aspect of growing up. I usually use this and it's a little bit more creative on the inside. So this is just straight up like writing, and I'm not going to show you any of it because it is super personal. This one I can get a little more creative. This is an example of a bunch of movie tickets I saved from when I was a kid. And then I've done some journaling in here and just like tucked it in here. And I just did this journaling on however much paper I had that I needed to get my thought out on, and I tucked it in here. So there's many different ways to do this, a more creative approach, a more straightforward approach. But the point is that you shouldn't buy a notebook or get some sort of tool that is restricted by a daily date or anything else dated, because for this exercise to really work, you need it to not feel restricted, mandated, or controlled in any way. At least that's how it works for me. I just need to let my mind wander free, and I need to be able to write as much as I need to in that given instance without any sort of page limit or page mandate. And I usually keep all my journals after I fill them up because these journals map out my decision-making process and emotional experience of my current reality. I have had so much success looking back at journals like this when I find myself in similar situations to what I was going through when I was writing about it here. I might look back on this and identify patterns that need to correct going forward. And I often have a lot more compassion for myself. I actually had the experience of reading one of my old journals recently when I was going through a very difficult time, and I read through the journal entry and I was like, hey, I have actually dealt with a situation I'm dealing with right now in the past, and I was so lost back then. I was so lost, and I have a much better understanding of how to handle it this time. So recognizing how far you have come is also a really big benefit of journaling like this, and of course it gets all the thoughts out of your head in the moment too. If unstructured journaling doesn't work for you, you can also do a prompted journal, and there are tons and tons of prompts that you can look at online, but my favorite, most basic prompt is what worked, what didn't work. This can be applied to any situation in life, from work meetings to difficult conversations to planning a birthday party. This type of journaling works really well after specific events or moments in time, so after a big meeting or after a period of a month when you were working on something, rather than just any old moment in your life, which is better for unstructured journaling. But the way this works, the way I usually do it, is that I just open to a blank page in whatever notebook I'm using, and I divide the page in two, just like that. And then on one side, I write what worked. And then on the other side, I write what didn't work.
And sometimes you misspell didn't, and that's just life, baby. Then from here, I just bullet point what worked and what didn't. It's super straightforward. So I might be doing this for like the month of August, right? Or I might be doing this for a big meeting. Whatever thing you're applying, you want to take that event and in both columns, write what worked or what didn't work about that event. This helps you assess sort of the positives and the negatives of a situation. It's sort of a post-event pros and cons list, so to speak. And the key with this is to not berate yourself in the what didn't work column and to not use other people's emotions or external factors outside of your control in the what worked column. So a bad example would be writing here like, Mom was happy. It's great that your mom was happy, but why was your mom happy? What was the goal? How did you make her happy? Would all of your efforts still have been what worked, even if your mom happened to have a bad day? So say you were throwing a birthday party for mom. Yeah, great, mom loved it. But what really worked was that you double and triple checked with the caterer to make sure that they came on time, for example. So you want to be writing those types of things down instead. In the what didn't work column, a bad example of what to put in the what didn't work column would be something like, I failed the work project. This can just basically lead you to feel like you are a failure even when you are not, even when you worked really hard. So you want to get curious. You want to try to stay objective. What led you to fail your work project? Were you supported by your colleagues through it, or did you purposefully avoid working until the last minute? Are you just under a lot of stress? Did the stress get to you? Be compassionate with yourself and write down real solutions. We do want to know the why here. So I failed the work project is not so good, but maybe I didn't get enough sleep, so I became distracted during the presentation. Boom. I didn't get enough sleep, so I became distracted during the presentation. This is super actionable. I failed is not super actionable and can just lead you to feel bad about yourself. We don't want to write that. Identifying what was working and what wasn't working about any given situation is going to help you better prepare for events, situations, etc. like this that come up in the future. So I really, really like this exercise, doing it on a regular basis and around big, important things in my life. The next type of journaling that I do a lot is what I call accomplishment journaling. And accomplishment journaling was actually recommended to me by a therapist several years ago after I expressed a sense of feeling generally overwhelmed and feeling like I never got anything done and feeling like a failure because of it. I have done it in sort of a daily to-done list way. So for example, this is a recent example from my common planner, which is the planner I'm in very often. And this list here is just what I accomplished. So I was keeping track of my to-do list in a separate planner, and then I came into this planner and just wrote down what I actually accomplished that day and what I actually did. This is super helpful from a work standpoint because I'm able to tell my supervisors, look, I did the lists this day, I did the welcome email this day, I did XYZ this day. But it's also just helpful for me because it's a way to see and acknowledge all of the hard stuff that I did. Yes, some of these items were not on my original to-do list that I set out for myself. Some of these items were on that to-do list. Some of those to-do list items didn't get done at all, but I did do something, and it helps me to realize what I actually do every single day instead of getting distracted or upset by the fact that my to-do list didn't necessarily go according to plan. I'll show you another quick way that I've done this before in the past. During the pandemic, I did this, the page I'm about to show you, this spread, I did this every single week. So this is an example of a type of spread that I set up in my bullet journal when it was during the pandemic and my mental health was like tanking. And I wrote out my accomplishments here. I was also tracking my moods and doing a meal tracker here, which is sort of a different thing. But the best thing that I did for my mental health during that time was tracking out my accomplishments. You can see there are some things like grocery shop successfully. I note what meals I made. I note what projects I completed. I note that I went to a protest. I note that I watched a TV show and finished. Where's my note that I finished Lost? Finished Lost season 1, exactly. So some of these are really small things that basically just made me feel like a human, because even if I didn't get anything done in terms of my to-do list, I was always coming in here at the end of every day and I was writing out what I actually did that made me feel accomplished. Sometimes your accomplishments list is going to be things like I finally finished an email, I showered and ate a healthy breakfast, When your spoons are low, when your mental health is low, emails and showering might be the hardest thing that you do all day, but they belong on an accomplishments list because you succeeded, even though you had to work really hard at them. An accomplishments list enables us to recognize that we're just trying to be better than our previous version of ourselves, so it can really help you celebrate what was an actual win for you. You can also see down here that I accompanied this accomplishment journaling with a what worked, what didn't work prompt. I was just journaling about both of those things along the bottom here. And it made this one of the most useful and successful and helpful reflection spreads that I have ever created in any of my journals. This really, really got me through the pandemic. So if you're looking for a template, this is a really good one if you're struggling.
I want to hop in here really quickly and talk about a great self-care strategy, which is meditation. And I actually just got started with meditation thanks to the sponsor of today's video, which is Aura. I have tried meditating with a bunch of different apps and tools over the years, but Aura is the world's largest mental wellness content library, customized to specifically fit your needs. Think like Spotify, but for mindfulness. When you sign up, Aura will ask you what you're going through, from stress and anxiety to trouble falling asleep at night. Then, instead of having you wade through a million choices, they will show you content designed to solve these problems. It's not just meditation, they also have stories, ASMR, behavioral therapy, and even hypnosis, which has been really fun to try. For me personally, I have always had trouble turning my brain off to go to sleep at night. Even listening to music or nature sounds doesn't really work for me because I end up getting just used to the sounds. But Aura has a constantly changing rotation of sleep meditations that I can use to go to sleep every night. And the meditations are great. I mean, the first few minutes are great, then I fall asleep, which is kind of how you know it's working. This app has won the Best of Apple awards, and it's used by over 7 million people, so it works. There are hundreds of coaches, therapists, and storytellers on the app, so you can be sure to find one that fits your needs. So whether you want to heal your mind and soul or just get a good night's sleep, you can get started for completely free on Aura's website using the link in my description. The first 500 people to click the link will get a 1-month free trial and a 25% off discount. Okay, now that we are all a bit more mindful, let's translate some of that into our planning.
The fourth type of reflection for self-care that I do is memory keeping. Now, I know a lot of people have different definitions of what memory keeping is, but for me, I use it as a gratitude replacement. So I memory keep a few different ways, and I'll show you the main two here. The first way is that I keep sort of a memory journal, and this is my journal for this year. It's a Hobonichi Techo A6 original. It's a dated journal, so it has dated pages. So I have just about enough space here to write out a quick, joyful, light memory that I had during every day. When I longhand journal, I write a lot. So having a small space really helps me to focus down on what was joyful, what was meaningful, what was impactful during that day. I'm usually trying to keep this positive, which is why I say I use it as an alternate to gratitude journaling. Gratitude journaling has never felt easy to me, and every time I have tried to write like a gratitude list or a gratitude journal, I just feel a little bit silly. So my form of memory keeping is a bit more my speed. It's more longhand. I can write down a key memory, something that made me happy, and how I feel about it. And I'm still getting some benefits because of that. This is an example. This one actually took up 2 pages, even though the event was only 1 day. But this was the time that my sister and I this year went and saw Noah Kahn in concert. You can see we were literally so close. I took this picture myself, and then this is a picture of me and my sister afterwards. So you can see it's a little bit more decorative. I often will write things in the margins. I often will paste in pictures or stickers or something like that, just to make it sort of more fun and more buoyant. I'm not necessarily shying away from difficult emotions with this. For example, in this journal entry, I talk about how my sister is going to be leaving for grad school in just a few short weeks and how much I'm proud of her, but how I'm going to miss her. So it's not just, coming from like pure whatever toxic positivity. It's coming from a space of like, what is the most important thing that I was feeling? What made me feel buoyant that day, right? And sharing this experience with my sister, even though she was about to be leaving, really hit that exact definition. The second way that I do memory keeping most of the time is that I will incorporate it into my planning somehow. So this is a week from my work planner, the planner that I was using for work. And I built in on purpose this little memories section here on the side. What I like to do in my planners is just stick down a character sticker of some sort that reflects the emotion that I was feeling that day or a memory that I was experiencing that day. This particular week was really, really stressful. So what this kind of memory keeping helps me do is just acknowledge the feelings that I am feeling and helps me feel witnessed in those feelings. This week was so stressful, as you can see from the variety of stress stickers that I have down here. Keeping a column for memories, keeping a column where I can reflect on the day helped me make space for the stress I was feeling and to acknowledge it. Then I was able to move on. Lots and lots of circumstances, this is actually a joyous place in my planner. For example, on this page, you can see that I wrote about a treat that I got, that I had a great day with my team on this day. So it can really be a joyous space, but also a space to acknowledge things that are not going so well sometimes. The last kind of self-care or reflection-y strategy that I use is ugly journaling. I have talked about ugly journaling before on my channel, and it's essentially a journaling strategy that I use that is different from my more longhand form of journaling that I do every day or every once in a while. These are different. Ugly journaling is a specific notebook that you keep to hold the parts of yourself that you are really, really ashamed of or embarrassed by. It is technically a kind of longhand, long form journaling, but my ugly journal is essentially somewhere that I can put the absolute darkest things I think or feel. And that may sound super dramatic. I know I sound really buoyant and happy on this YouTube channel all the time, but I struggle a lot with things like intrusive thoughts or mental health episodes. And I use this journal and keep it separate from my other journals because when I'm going through something like that, it is really easy for me to feel isolated from my normal life and thus from my normal journaling practice. So I like to keep my journal in a pocket-sized notebook. This is a Pocket Hobonichi hardcover book. The size helps it feel so much less intimidating than a bigger page to get started, especially because during my worst mental health spirals, I will often be so unmotivated to write. So having a smaller space to get started just feels more doable in that moment. This feels a lot more doable than something like this when I'm really going through it. And because of its size, it's also really easy to hide. I don't live in a household where I really need to hide it from anybody who lives with me, but I do sometimes like to keep this tucked away and hide it from myself. So these are journals that I write in and tell myself that I can burn after I write it. And I keep it hidden most of the time because when I'm just going through my daily life, I don't need this journal and I don't need to use it. But I do end up usually keeping my ugly journals because it's really here where I get the benefit of looking back at what I went through, the really hardest stuff that has happened to me, and I can see just how far I've come. It's amazing and important to recognize yourself for coming so far in your mental health journey. So whether you keep your deep dark thoughts in a special pocket-sized notebook that's easy to hide and tuck away when you don't want to look at that part of yourself, or whether you build it into a more larger journaling practice and keep it with your other thoughts, or whether you put it in a memory keeping practice or whatever. I really recommend any or all of these strategies so that you can look back on the things that you've written and the hard things that you've went through and tell yourself that you're doing better now, because you are. Growing isn't always linear, but looking at our timed, dated planners can help us recognize just how much we have grown from past versions of ourselves.
Okay, those are my reflection strategies. Let me know down in the comments what you use to reflect on your life and how you use it to help you grow into the person you want to be. Go ahead and do a little what worked, what didn't work exercise down in the comments if you feel so inclined. What has worked for you in the past in terms of reflecting on your life and what hasn't? Share your tips and expertise. I would love to hear from you down there, and I think we can all help each other grow on this topic collectively. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. I love you. Thanks for being subscribed, for being awesome. I have an Instagram. You should follow me there. It's Rachel in Theory. And also I have another video here on the screen, more about my journaling and reflection stuff, I think. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.